Hi guys. Okay, now my concern is quite simple, how to get the message across. We've had some very profound speakers tonight. Mine, I think, is going to be a very, very simple talk. I think I'm like most members of the public. When 9/11 happened, I was suckered in absolutely, completely and utterly for a short period of time. I went to the West Bank in 2002. I bumped into an architect. I was very interested in Benjamin Netanyahu's comment on September the 12th, 2001, when he was asked what he thought of 9/11. He said it was very good. Not very good, but very good for Israel because it will engender sympathy. So I wanted to talk to this architect about the effect, if any, that September 11th had on the Palestinian people. He said, well, Peter, the problem is that people in the West can't see the truth for the dust. I thought he was speaking metaphorically. He said to me, no, it's not a metaphor, it's quite simple. When a building is destroyed in the West Bank, there are two ways of doing it. One way is that they use a bulldozer, in which case you get great chunks of concrete. The second way is that they use explosives, in which case you get a pyroclastic cloud of dust, and that's what he meant. I kind of remembered it, but I went into torpor, and 2 years later I was given a DVD by Jebby Walter, okay, and that finally convinced me. And I started, like most people, I think, just talking to people, trying to, as our last speaker said, giving out DVDs, trying to influence people. I did this for about 7 years. After 7 years, I got fed up with it. I thought I wasn't getting anywhere, and I was on the verge of saying, oh, forget it, let's do something else, let's move on to another activity. But then I thought, no, I'm going to give it one more go. So I thought, what are my skills? What are my strengths? Now, for the first 15 years of my adult life, I was an actor and a dramatist, so I thought, right, I'm going to do that. I'm going to write a play. What's the topic of the play? Well, obviously, as everybody has said tonight, the most obvious thing that hits people is World Trade Center 7. So I decided to write on World Trade Center 7. And there's another reason for it. Anybody that's seen the Experts Speak Out DVD will have seen the section on cognitive dissonance. Now this is very, very important because when a human being is given a cognition of an event, that is cemented over time, it's very, very difficult to dislodge that. Now, I have great respect for what Neil's just said about his method. It's very good, okay? But there is one event where there is not a lot of cognitive dissonance, and that is World Trade Center 7. Why is that? Because there was no narrative as to the collapse of World Trade Center 7, because after the first day, no one showed it on TV anymore. So when you approach someone about Building 7, there is no cognitive dissonance to dispel. Just let me say, cognitive dissonance is when you have a particular view and then someone says something else, and it's very difficult to dislodge this view, however good your argument is. World Trade Center 7 doesn't have that. So I started to write a play, and we put it on. We've now put it on in 6 times, 3 times in Camden, once in Bristol, once in Hackney, and once at my tennis club, where I work. We've had about 700 people that have come to see it, and I think we've changed some minds. That's good. Now, I thought, what are the assets? What are the strengths I have? Could you just have a little look at this? I think there's one next to you. The lights are on. Please have a little look. If you look at the front page on the left, you will see a character by the name of Mr. David Shaler. Now, a lot of people warned me about David. They said, don't bring David in, okay, because he wants to talk about God and he wants to wear high heels. I've seen him in his high heels, gorgeous. But I thought, no, I'm going to be brave, and we're going to have David in it. I had a chat with him, okay, and he seemed pretty solid to me, you know, as long as I made sure he behaved. It worked, okay, we were on the front page of the Camden New Journal, spy on the stage, and David also appeared on page 3. You nervous? Okay, okay, don't be. okay, the spy who came in from stage left, which I thought was a nice John le Carre. Okay, so that worked very well. Also, if you go back to the leaflet, okay, in the middle there, there's a gentleman called Matt Campbell, okay, who I think is another asset. Why is he an asset? Well, you heard him speak tonight. It's very brave of him to, as a bereaved family member, okay, but both of these gentlemen gave us very, very good publicity. So that's what we need, novel ways of getting the message out. If you go further to the right, you'll see someone pointing there at the building 7. Well, everything's got its downside. Sorry about that. Okay, now if you open up, okay, information, lots of information there. Stills of building 7 down the bottom, and also some very eminent speakers, one of whom we've heard from tonight, Mr. Niels Harris. Okay, and these were carefully chosen because there are lots of PhDs there, and whatever we think of mainstream education, if somebody says they're a PhD, you do tend to listen. There are also psychologists there, explosive experts, people that have worked for controlled demolition, a fellow of the American Institute of Architects, and a gentleman who designed the original building. So that was, I thought, very good, and it did seem to work. On the back page, we have, broadening it out, lots of quotes. I love my quotes. And 1 minute. Wow. Okay. Now, as I said, about 700 people have seen it. 150 of those people were already converted. So we managed to get to about 550 people who weren't. There are certain groups, I believe, that we need to get to. Okay. Noel and I went to a meeting the other day at Amnesty. Okay, and the theme of the meeting was the press, and the press's failure to engage honestly with the situation in Gaza. I thought this is a very good opportunity, and so I leafleted and I put in this letter, because I think that targeted leafleting is important. I mean, for instance, you meet an architect, what do you talk about? Building 7. You meet a pilot, what do you talk about? You talk about Hani Hanja, you talk about phone calls from 35,000 feet, okay? If you meet someone down in the city, what do you talk about? You talk about all the information that Fran has introduced today. It's got to be targeted leafleting, targeted contact. So, this was a meeting called by PSC, Stop the War, and it was at Amnesty International. It wasn't until November 2002, when I travelled to the West Bank with ISM, that I fully realised the appalling disparity between the mainstream media's message and the true situation on the ground. The disparity, of course, has been a reality since 1948. Although press coverage of the Palestinian issue is a blatant example of how the mainstream media fails to accurately inform, it is not the only example. When Benjamin Netanyahu was asked on September the 12th what he thought of 9/11, he replied, "It's very good, well, not very good, but it will generate immediate sympathy." Over the last 13 years, I'm getting there now, okay, the press coverage of the dozens of anomalies within the official 9/11 narrative has failed the British people to the same extent as the press coverage of the Palestinian issue. The fabrication of 9/11 has not only increased the suffering of the Palestinian people, but it is also the trigger for the whole lunatic, meretricious war on terror, which has led to its disaster in Iraq and Afghanistan and much of the Middle East. I'm touching it because he was Robert Fisk in the play. In the section of the Chilcot inquiry, when Tony Blair was being questioned about reasons for invading Iraq, 9/11 was mentioned 34 times, roughly once every 2 minutes. The heads of state of 5 countries, Cuba, Venezuela, Malaysia, Egypt, Iran, have called for a new investigation. Francesco Cossiga, Italy's president from 1985 to 92, has also called for one. In January 28, it was debated in the Japanese parliament. As of today, 2,242. It's interesting because as of today it's now 2,262. Brave architects and engineers, mainly American, are challenging the National Institute of Standards and Technology's explanation of the collapse of World Trade Center 7. defies all known laws of physics. The Honorary President of Italy's Supreme Court, Fernando Pozzomato, has called for a new investigation in the ICC in The Hague. Random Order Theatre Company is doing a play, 7 Seconds in Camden, on September the 5th, 6th and 7th. Please come. Please, Neathey. Targeting groups in order to make sure that we have the greatest impact. Thanks, mate.